In this video, we will try and understand the history of the Vietnam War. Along with this, we will try to learn much more things. So without further ado, let's dive into deep. If we look at the geography of the Vietnam, so it is located in the Southeast Asia at eastern edge of the Indochina peninsula bordered by Laos, Cambodia, China, South China Sea. Now let's discuss the most pertinent point. Vietnam War, also known as Second Indochina War, started from 1955 to 1975. It was considered a proxy war amid Cold War because the prime cause of this war was intensified tensions between Soviet Union and the USA. As the domino theory of the USA that if one Southeast Asian country fell to the communism, many other countries would follow the suit. That was also the stakeholder of this war. Chronologically, as we know that the Vietnam was under the control of French colonial empire from 1860 to 1941, same as like the Indo subcontinent of the India, which was under the colonial control of the British. And we got the India and Pakistan got independence in 1947, but the Vietnam was under the control of French colonial empire. The Japan forces invaded Vietnam in 1941 during the World War II, and the Vietnam's internal peacemakers and independence seekers made a political group and armed forces to mitigate the external impact upon their nation. And that political group was named as Viet Minh, which was led by the Ho Chi Minh. He was inspired by the Chinese and Soviet communist regimes. Although Ho Chi Minh died in 1969, could not start the victory of North Vietnam over entire region and defeat of US. During World War II, when Japan embraced the defeat, their forces in Vietnam surrendered and left their position. Then Hanoi, in northern side of Vietnam, came under the control of Ho Chi Minh. He named himself as president of North Vietnam. On the contrary, French army was not behind anyone. They also clinched the control of Saigon in the southern side of the Vietnam, which was spearheaded by Bao Dai, a French educated imperial. Certain border skirmishes were common between both rivals armed forces, between the North and South army forces. They came in face-to-face battle of Dien Bien Phu in 1954. Guess who won this? It was Ho Chi Minh's army who won that war, that battle. It marked the end of the French colonial rule in Indochina in Vietnam. Later of this event, a treaty was signed which was named as Geneva Conference. It was signed in 1954. The French agreed to withdraw their troops and elections were decided to be held after 2 years in 1956. And until that, Vietnam was split into two at 17 north latitude or also known as 17 parallel, where Bao taking command of the south while Ho grabbing north. But it was of no avail when anti-communist Neo Dien Bu, a politician who set aside imperial Bao regime and took his control over the Republic of Vietnam, also known as South Vietnam. Then later what happened, Viet Cong. In Viet Cong, what is a Viet Cong basically? In 1955, when President Dwight D. Eisenhower had pledged his firm support to Diem and his Soviet Vietnam, the irony was that anyone who was appearing as sympathizers of North Vietnam in South, whom Diem used to call Viet Cong, Diem used to correct them with meticulous equipment and the military support from the US. Almost 100,000 civilians were arrested, tortured, and executed due to their prime support for Ho. Diem's regime in South was authoritarian and oppressive. Due to this, many inhabitants in South Vietnam, were against him. Therefore, they formed NLF, abbreviation of National Liberation Front, and engaged many South Vietnamese armies into firefights. In 1961, when John Kennedy visited to anticipate the situation in Vietnam, he advised the US to build up a strong support in military and economic to them of the North Vietnam, though he stopped US to intervene at large scale. In 1962, the US military presence in South Vietnam had reached some 9,000 troops. In August 1964, North Vietnam's torpedo boats attacked two US destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin. Johnson ordered the retaliatory bombing in military targets in North Vietnam, with full support of Congress in the US, giving Johnson broad war-making powers. The bombing was not limited to only Vietnam. From 1964 to 1973, the US covertly dropped 2 million tons of bombs on neighboring neutral Laos as well. The bombing campaign was meant to disrupt the flow of supplies across the Ho Chi Minh Trail into Vietnam. In 1965, Johnson, with public support, sent troops in Vietnam. Number of troops increased from 82,000 to 500,000. And then after, when the US sent its troops and they fought the war over their multiple years, then in the US the public was started the protest because it was creating much havoc in the Vietnam. The civilians were, the major prime cause of the humiliation over there. So the mistrust upon the government increased physical and physiological deterioration among the US soldiers. Between July 1966 and July 1977-73, more than 503,000 US military personnel deserted, and a robust anti-war movement among the American forces sparked violent protest. Killings and mass incarceration of personnel stationed in Vietnam as well as within the United States. In October 1967, some 35,000 demonstrators staged a massive Vietnam War protest outside the Pentagon. In 1968, almost 70,000 Army of Democratic Republic of Vietnam assaulted series of fires upon 100 cities of South Vietnam to unmotivate their personnel. They only controlled for a few days due to US Army's more offensive response. What is a Vietnamization? Richard Nixon, the then president of the US, after Johnson, who ran his political campaign as to retrieve the US armed forces from Vietnam, he named his program as Vietnamization. Then the incidents of My Lai massacre came, when US soldiers had massacrously slaughtered more than 400 unarmed civilians in village of My Lai in March 1968. And then the anti-war sentiments in the US were uproaring, and America provided training to South Vietnam and South Vietnam army and decreased their troops from there. And then the Paris Peace Accord was signed in 1977. According to that, the American almost taking out their army from the South Vietnam. And more than in this war, more than it is said that 3 million people, including the 58,000 Americans, were killed in the Vietnam War, and more than half of the dead were the Vietnamese civilians. So, whenever the war occurred, there is not the army, there is not the regime who is suffered the most. That is the civilian, the common people, the ordinary people who have the social life, who have the common life. These are the people who suffer the most. After the evacuation of the US Army from the South Vietnam, then the North Vietnam captured the Saigon, the North Vietnam, and then it was under the control of the Ho Chi Minh's regime. And until that, the Ho Chi Minh was died. But yeah, the Republic, the Democratic Republic of the Vietnam, ran over there. And still, then we will see that there is a communist regime. So, thank you so much for watching this. Hope you understand.